Now that's a bold claim. The UK isn't the biggest, richest, or loudest player on the world stage, but when it comes to influence, technology, intelligence, and global reach, few countries even come close. Britain's power isn't just measured in firepower, it's in how and where it can use it. And make no mistake, the British lion may look polite, but its claws are razor sharp. To understand why, we've got to look at how the UK transformed from an empire that once ruled a quarter of the planet into a 21st century superpower in everything but name. The British Empire may have faded from the maps, but the infrastructure it left behind, alliances, bases, trade routes, and influence became the backbone of a modern global defense network. In the post-war era, Britain pivoted from conquest to cooperation, helping found NATO, securing a permanent UN Security Council seat, and establishing itself as America's most reliable ally. The result? A country that doesn't need to dominate the world to shape it. Fast forward to 2025, and the UK ranks firmly among the top 6 military powers on Earth. Not bad for an island smaller than Texas, but what makes it truly remarkable is the balance it strikes between raw military capability and strategic subtlety. Unlike the all-out arms races of the Cold War, modern British defense is about precision, readiness, and adaptability. It's about doing more with less and doing it smarter than anyone else. Take the Royal Navy, for example, once the undisputed ruler of the seas, and still one of the most advanced fleets afloat. At the heart of it are the Queen Elizabeth-class aircraft carriers, each capable of deploying up to 40 F-35B stealth fighters. These aren't just floating airstrips, they're mobile bases of power, capable of operating anywhere from the Arctic to the South China Sea. And they often do. Behind them are the new Type 26 and Type 31 frigates, multi-mission warships designed for everything from submarine hunting to missile defense. And beneath the surface, there's something even deadlier. The UK's Dreadnought-class nuclear submarines, stealthy, silent, and each capable of carrying the kind of firepower that could end civilization several times over. That brings us to the backbone of British deterrence, its continuous at-sea nuclear patrol. Since 1969, the Royal Navy has always had at least one nuclear-armed submarine somewhere in the world's oceans, unseen, unheard, and ready. Think of it as Britain's ultimate insurance policy, the quiet promise that no matter what happens, no enemy can strike without risking everything in return. These Dreadnought subs are being built right now to keep that deterrent credible well into the 2050s, and at a price tag north of £15 billion, it's one of the most ambitious defense projects in Europe. But nuclear weapons aren't the only silent threat in the British arsenal. The next domain of warfare isn't the sea or the air, it's cyberspace. And here, the UK is emerging as one of the world's true cyber superpowers. Its National Cyber Force, a joint effort between GCHQ and the Ministry of Defense, leads offensive and defensive cyber operations. In short, they can both protect Britain's networks and ruin an enemy's day without firing a single shot. And behind that digital shield stands an intelligence empire, MI5, MI6, and GCHQ, institutions so legendary that Hollywood has been using them for decades as shorthand for elite espionage. The UK's participation in the Five Eyes alliance, alongside the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, gives it unparalleled access to global intelligence. Simply put, if something's happening anywhere in the world, London probably knows about it. And it's not just brains and bytes. The Royal Air Force continues to evolve into one of the most technologically advanced air arms in existence. Its fleet of F-35s and Typhoons are being upgraded with AI-assisted targeting and next-gen radar systems. And on the horizon, there's Tempest, the 6th-generation fighter program that will redefine air combat with stealth, drones, and laser weapon integration. The UK is developing it in partnership with Italy and Japan, a perfect example of how British defense strategy always multiplies strength through cooperation. So yes, the UK doesn't have the biggest military, but that's missing the point. Britain's edge lies in its ability to project force anywhere, anytime, with speed, precision, and legitimacy. Its global footprint spans bases in Cyprus, Kenya, Brunei, and the Falklands. British Special Forces train alongside partners across Africa and Asia, while the Royal Navy enforces freedom of navigation from the Persian Gulf to the Indo-Pacific. It's a level of global mobility that even larger militaries struggle to match. And that's not by accident. Britain's defense strategy revolves around readiness, a concept baked into its national DNA. The British Army may be smaller than it was during the Cold War, but it's one of the most battle-tested forces in the world. From Iraq to Afghanistan to Ukraine, British troops have operated in the harshest conditions imaginable, gaining not just experience, but adaptability. This isn't an army designed to conquer, it's one designed to respond fast, flexibly, and effectively. When NATO needs a rapid response force on Europe's eastern flank, it's often the UK that leads it. When allies need training or advanced weapons, it's the UK that delivers first. Just ask Ukraine. Speaking of which, Britain's role in Ukraine has been nothing short of transformative. Long before many others acted, the UK sent anti-tank weapons, training teams, and intelligence support that helped turn the tide of early battles. It wasn't just about supplying gear, it was about sending a message that aggression in Europe would not go unanswered. And that's exactly what sets the UK apart. It doesn't just talk about defending democracy, it shows up. But while all this military hardware and action sounds impressive, the real strength of Britain's defense posture is its balance of power and diplomacy. The UK has a rare mix, a military strong enough to deter, and diplomacy refined enough to de-escalate. It holds a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, commands respect in NATO, and wields immense influence through the Commonwealth and its cultural exports, language, education, media, and science. As one diplomat once said, "When Britain speaks, people listen, and when it acts, people notice." In 2025, the United Kingdom isn't just keeping pace with modern warfare, it's reinventing how a middle power operates in a world of superpowers. The new Strategic Defense Review has made that clear. Britain isn't trying to match America's sheer mass or China's numbers. It's playing to its strengths: speed, technology, intelligence, and global coordination. It's like being in a boxing ring with two giants. You don't go punch for punch. You stay light on your feet, and when you strike, you make it count. At the core of this modernization effort is a fundamental shift, from heavy, slow-moving legacy systems to agile, data-driven, AI-assisted warfare. The British military is moving toward multi-domain integration, a fancy term for connecting everything that fights, flies, sails, spies, or types on a keyboard into one single network. It means that an RAF pilot can share live data with a Royal Navy destroyer, which can feed targeting information to a cyber operations unit, which can, in turn, disrupt enemy communications before a single shot is fired. The entire battlefield becomes a connected web, and the UK plans to sit at its center. That's not just theory either. Britain's National Cyber Force, based in Samlesbury, operates as both shield and sword in this new digital arena. Think of it as the modern-day equivalent of Bletchley Park. Only this time, they're not just breaking codes, they're breaking networks. They can shut down enemy logistics, jam communications, and even mislead satellites. In a war where information moves faster than bullets, that's a serious advantage. But let's be honest, for a country known for rainy weather and stiff upper lips, Britain's defense program is surprisingly futuristic. The Tempest fighter jet, under development with Italy and Japan, will feature AI co-pilots, drone wingmen, and laser weapons. Yes, lasers. Britain is basically building a stealth fighter from the future, and the prototypes are already taking shape. The same goes for its drone programs, from swarming UAVs to underwater autonomous vehicles designed to patrol the North Atlantic. And let's not forget Dragonfire, the UK's new directed energy weapon, a literal laser cannon capable of vaporizing incoming drones and missiles mid-air. If that sounds like science fiction, well, that's because 5 years ago, it was. All this high-tech wizardry is backed by money, and lots of it. The UK currently spends over £50 billion a year on defense, making it Europe's second largest spender after France and the sixth globally. But where that money goes matters more than the number itself. The British Ministry of Defense has poured billions into nuclear modernization, shipbuilding, and cyber warfare, while also reforming logistics and personnel to ensure the military can actually sustain operations abroad. One of the biggest criticisms of the British armed forces in the past was overstretch, being everywhere but thinly spread. Now the focus is on doing fewer things better with precision rather than volume. And this refined approach is already paying off. In global crises, Britain has proven it can deploy fast, coordinate allies, and deliver advanced weapon systems before most others have finished scheduling a press conference. During the Ukraine conflict, it was the UK, not the EU, not the UN, that first sent anti-tank missiles and training teams to Kyiv. British instructors trained tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops. Its intelligence services provided real-time battlefield data, and when the Royal Air Force delivered Storm Shadow cruise missiles, they immediately changed the dynamics on the ground. Britain didn't just support Ukraine, it shaped the war's outcome. That's the pattern: quiet influence, decisive impact. From naval patrols in the Persian Gulf to leading NATO battle groups in Estonia and Poland, the UK has a habit of showing up in the world's trouble spots before things spiral out of control. It doesn't posture, it acts. And that's one reason allies trust Britain so deeply. It has credibility. Decades of combat experience, a disciplined command structure, and some of the best trained soldiers and pilots on the planet. You don't need 1 million troops when the ones you have are really that good. Now, some critics will argue that Britain's military is too small, that cuts and downsizing have eroded its power, and sure, numbers have dropped. The army is leaner than ever. But here's the reality. Modern warfare doesn't reward size anymore. It rewards intelligence, adaptability, and integration. A single squad with drones, satellite feeds, and real-time data can now do what a battalion once did. Britain gets that. It's building quality over quantity, technology over tradition. Besides, power isn't just about hardware, it's about influence. The UK wields something few others can, an extraordinary blend of military and diplomatic reach. As one of only 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, a founding member of NATO, and the linchpin between Europe and the United States, Britain's diplomatic network amplifies its military power tenfold. When Washington wants to coordinate with Europe, it calls London. When smaller nations need a reliable defense partner, it's the British who step up. And let's not forget the Commonwealth, a network of 56 nations, many of which still train their officers in British academies, buy British arms, and operate under British doctrines. That's not just nostalgia, that's strategic reach. And while Britain's influence often carries the soft touch of diplomacy, make no mistake, it still packs a punch. The Royal Navy's Carrier Strike Group recently completed a massive deployment across the Indo-Pacific, working alongside Japan, Australia, and the US. It wasn't a show of force, it was a message. Britain is back in the global game, and it's here to stay. The same goes for the AUKUS alliance, the trilateral pact between Australia, the UK, and the US, which will deliver nuclear-powered submarines to Canberra and establish new joint technologies in quantum computing, AI, and undersea warfare. And who's building those new subs? The Brits. In short, the UK has managed to do something rare, to turn legacy power into modern relevance. It's not an empire anymore, but it doesn't need to be. The empire's navy became a NATO powerhouse. The colonial network became a global alliance system, and the British knack for engineering and innovation evolved into one of the most sophisticated defense industries on Earth. BAE Systems, Rolls-Royce Defense, and GCHQ are designing technologies that even the Pentagon keeps an eye on. But what truly separates the UK from the rest isn't its ships, jets, or nukes. It's its mindset. The British military doesn't think in terms of if it will be called to act. It thinks when. That culture of readiness, from the SAS to the Royal Marines to cyber operators, is what keeps Britain relevant. It's why the UK remains the glue that holds so many Western coalitions together. And yet, perhaps the most underrated part of Britain's power is its restraint. Unlike some of the world's louder militaries, the UK doesn't need to constantly prove itself. It knows its worth. It doesn't need to declare red lines on TV. It simply shows up, does the job, and leaves the world slightly more stable than it found it. For all its warships, submarines, and cyber command centers, Britain's greatest weapon might not actually fire at all. It's soft power, and few nations have mastered that art like the United Kingdom. Soft power is the ability to influence others without coercion, to shape the world not through fear, but through persuasion, trust, and familiarity. And the UK practically wrote the manual on it. English is the language of diplomacy, aviation, and global commerce. British universities draw the brightest minds from every continent. The BBC World Service broadcasts into every time zone. And culturally, from Shakespeare to the Premier League, from Bond to The Crown, Britain occupies a unique space in global consciousness, a mix of credibility, charm, and authority. Now combine that with military muscle, and you have something potent. When the Royal Navy sails into a region, it doesn't just carry missiles, it carries legitimacy. British intervention, even symbolic, tends to calm allies and worry adversaries. That's influence most nations can only dream of. In many ways, the UK's global role today mirrors its motto from the 18th century, to rule the waves, but these days with Wi-Fi. And this isn't just vanity, it's strategy. Britain understands that wars aren't just fought with bullets, but with narratives. That's why its global communications, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic missions are all tightly integrated with defense. MI6 doesn't just spy, it builds relationships. The BBC doesn't just inform, it frames perceptions. The Foreign Office doesn't just negotiate, it aligns allies. Every piece of the puzzle amplifies the others. Nowhere is that synergy clearer than in the Five Eyes Alliance, the world's most powerful intelligence sharing network. The UK isn't just a member, it's a cornerstone. American satellites may collect the data, but British analysts are often the ones interpreting it. GCHQ, Britain's top signals intelligence agency, is considered among the best in the world and has been credited with detecting and disrupting multiple global cyber attacks before they even began. When Washington wants clarity, it often calls Cheltenham. This duality, hard power backed by soft power, gives the UK extraordinary leverage. It can strike like a lion, but negotiate like a diplomat. It can operate in the shadows or lead from the front. Few countries can do both convincingly. Of course, all of this doesn't mean Britain's military is perfect. The country faces real challenges: recruitment shortfalls, aging equipment in certain divisions, and the never-ending struggle to balance budgets with global ambitions. Defense reforms are ongoing, and the Ministry of Defense has had to juggle modernization with morale. But here's the thing: every major power faces problems. What matters is how they adapt, and adaptation happens to be one of Britain's strongest traditions. The Strategic Defense Review 2025 addresses exactly that. It recognizes that modern threats aren't just about tanks on borders. They're about hybrid warfare, disinformation, cyber sabotage, and space-based espionage. So while other nations build more battalions, Britain is building a digital fortress. The armed forces are integrating AI systems to predict battlefield patterns, using quantum computing to decrypt communications, and experimenting with space surveillance platforms to monitor global military movements. The world is evolving, and Britain, in typical fashion, is quietly preparing for it. But maybe the best measure of power isn't just what you can destroy, but what you can protect. The UK has proven time and again that it can defend not only its homeland, but also its principles. In Ukraine, it stood firm against tyranny. In the Indo-Pacific, it stood for freedom of navigation. In NATO, it continues to serve as the connective tissue that keeps the alliance coherent. Britain doesn't always need to lead the fight, it often leads the purpose. And that's what truly sets it apart. So the next time someone tells you the UK is a post-Empire power, remember this: that post-Empire happens to have fifth-generation stealth fighters, nuclear submarines, one of the best intelligence networks in history, and a track record of turning chaos into order. The empire may be gone, but the lion still roars.